Alright, guten Abend und willkommen in Urglaawe Live Nummer 11. Ich bin dein host, Robert L. Schreiwer. And how's everybody doing tonight? Hopefully actually got people connected. I don't know yet. So I'm going to give it a second to see if it appears anywhere. And if anybody can actually hear me or see me, we'll find out. Up, we got one in. All right. All right. Hopefully other people are seeing this now. Unfortunately, once again, the whole thing with Facebook is even screwier now than it was before. You know, it used to be that the new Facebook Live interface was the only thing that was screwed up. Well, I tried to go back to the old Facebook Live interface, then I had to undo the new actual Facebook interface, and yeah, it kind of got sort of annoying and confusing. But this will do for now. I'm hoping that some of the people will be able to figure out how to get on. Especially if they're not, I don't know if you get this directive, whether you're friends with me or not as well. But I guess we'll find out. So anyway, I guess the big topics for right now are essentially Erntfescht and Zisasege. Oh, I do see. Okay, we're on there, so hopefully people will be able to join us. If you're in the Urglaawe group now, you should be able to see it. All right. Just 1 second. I want to give some of these folks some direction and make sure they can actually get in here. Let's see. All right, if you are in the Urglaawe group now. If you are in the Urglaawe group now. So you will see the live feed. All right. So anyway, I don't know if anybody has any particular questions about this particular time of year. This is a very impromptu discussion, but fortunately, this is also one that I can talk quite a bit about because this is actually one of the more defining moments in some of our research. Was the whole harvest home discussion when it first came up back when Urglaawe was really forming in 2007, and although actually the name Urglaawe and the live the beginnings of the organization of Urglaawe as a denomination of heathenry actually began in November of 2007, but prior to that I was kicking things around. It was actually the harvest home season in which I finally made the official break with my Christian identity. And so this is actually a special one because it was during this actual week in 2007 where I recognized that yes, I am crazy, but not for that reason. Recognition that Hallweard was talking to me, and began to understand that there are so many deities and out there. For those of you who do not know the story, I've always identified as Christian when I was younger, and but from my mother's side of the family, we had a whole lot of traditions that kept one foot in the fancy Dutch culture's more superstitious aspects, if you will, and and also the whole Braucherei and Hexerei thing coming through. And as I got older, I got more interested in that. And then I began to recognize that I was hearing the call and the requests and the orders of multiple deities, and I really didn't know exactly what to do with it. And I finally, in September of 2007, I went on a trip down to Florida. My parents have a house down in Naples, and I went down there, and I decided, I'm hearing all this. I don't really understand what to do with it. So I went and bought a book on like Hinduism for Dummies or something, because that was the only religion that I actually recognized as having actual multiple gods. So when I was reading that, and the author was somewhat of Norwegian descent, and in there she mentioned Asatru, and I was like, oh wow, okay. So I then looked into Asatru, and I came across Diana Paxson's Essential Asatru, ordered that book. It was sent to me pretty quickly, and as I was reading it, I was like, wait a minute, this is what our helpful entities from Brauchrai and Hexrai, this is what our some of our folkloric stuff, there are the old gods, and then like put like all of a sudden Eureka, 2 and 2, and all this stuff just hit me all at once. And that took place all in September of 2007. And so Erntfescht was actually the first holiday that ever crossed my horizon officially as somebody who was identifying as a Pennsylvania Dutch polytheist. The term Urglaawe wasn't established until November, but so Harvest Home, or Erntfescht, Erndankfest, this is the original Pennsylvania Dutch Thanksgiving. And it's funny. If you really stop to think about it, this is a very good time of year to actually have a Thanksgiving, because, well, you have excess crops to a degree, for in many cases, some of which will not preserve all that terribly long until modern refrigeration came along. And so you would consume some of those early on, so this would be a time of feast and bounty. By November, everybody's trying to conserve what they have left, but this was also an organic event for the Dutch folks. And one of the aspects of it is that people try to also trade foods. That if you grow a specialty, say that you grow barley as a specialty, and I grow some other, like if I grow wheat as a specialty, we might actually exchange crops so that you have some, I have some of the difference for variety throughout the winter. It's also the time for seed swaps. You have a particular heirloom crop that you want to expand. You might give me some in exchange for particular flowers that you liked in my garden. And we do that stuff at Erntfescht every year. This year is going to be interesting because this is the first of all of our major observances where we're finally going to be focusing mostly on the in-person gatherings. We're going as close to normal as we can. We'll still be having the online event as well, because it's still necessary during this COVID era here. And quite honestly, we'll probably carry that through well into the future, because I think it really helps people who are way out in the diaspora or who are solitaries, whether by choice or by simple circumstance. And I think that helps people to get together and be able to see these things, in play, even if they can't be at them in person. Plus, also for those of us who have had COVID, it definitely would help to be more careful, not to try to contract it again. I'm actually not that worried about it right now, but we'll still have our masks and we'll still be maintaining our social distance for it. But we're going to be in person. It'll be in New Jersey, and I'm looking very forward to it. All right. So anyway, so let's see what else about Harvest Home. So even in the Lutheran churches, like this is a very old Germanic custom. Apparently, nobody seems to have put a first year date on it, and it seems to have its roots indeed in heathen era Germanic practice. It's the Lutherans and the Reformed, and I'm assuming the Catholics too, but I honestly really didn't know many Catholics when I was growing up. I think it was third grade before I actually met the first people who were Catholics that I knew. So I actually don't really know much about Catholic tradition as it relates to this, but this is when you take all your food, like your food donations to fill the food pantries and everything, and it really is it's a pleasant, to me, it's a very pleasant, very meaningful holiday where you are giving of yourself, giving of yourself and taking for yourself what the community has to offer. So you're giving to the community and taking from the community in a balanced and measured manner. And this is also a time where people would pitch in together to help those who had a devastating loss, like somebody in the family passed away and they were unable to necessarily continue all the work of the farms throughout the summer. This community would come together and help to ensure that they had enough food to get through the winter. There's all sorts of like kind of romanticized and nobilized aspects to it. Just like with everything else, we all have our perfections and our imperfections, but we try to strive for better. And I do think that the whole backdrop of giving to the community is very important at this time of year. On the heels of Philadelphia Pagan Pride Day, which is one of Philadelphia's major heathen and pagan events, we had to do it all online this year. It was very, very popular, actually. It did well. But we're missing the food donation aspect that we have in most normal years. And so I'm going to remind folks who are going to be in attendance at Michelle's house on the 19th to please bring some sorts of food donations, if they can spare them, to go to various pantries, maybe here in Bristol because it's easier for dropping off. Some of the other things might be a Phil Abundance or the Mazzoni Center, anywhere that we have that we've donated to in the past. We need to keep that tradition alive within the heathen context of donating food and helping people to survive. But that, by the same token, one of the things that's also very important is that those of us who are suffering right now from job loss, from job reductions and things like that, that they also feel free to take if need be in order to sustain their own families and without stigma, shame, or strings attached to it. So there is a somber aspect to it this year because so many people have lost their jobs through no fault of their own, and it's kind of been a very tough year all around. But it's not getting any better really even for those of us who work, because so many people around us are seeing their hours cut or their jobs just disappearing. Anyway, so that's the long and the short, particularly the short, if you will, of Harvest Home or Erntfescht. But now, when Erntfescht was in full swing, which by the way it still is, there's a lot of people who celebrate this observance of all backgrounds in the Daicherai, but it's kind of been overshadowed to a degree by Yankee Thanksgiving, if you'll pardon the term, But when Yankee Thanksgiving came, there was actually widespread resistance throughout the Daicherai to it because we already had our own, was our cultural one, and it just didn't make sense to many of the people, the timing of it in November. And some people just saw it as kind of like once again, the dominant culture tries to stomp on the smaller culture. I don't see it that extreme personally in the last case, because quite honestly, does it really hurt us to have more than one day of gratitude? I actually think it's okay to have both, but I am Deitch, and so I do celebrate it more so at the end of September. But one thing I like about the Yankee Thanksgiving, again, part of the term, but that I like about that is the fact that no matter what religious background you have or what cultural background you have, it's something that brings everybody together on one day of a year, even if we do it within our own different contexts. It's one day of the year that people of all religions and all backgrounds can actually really share a particular sentiment of gratitude. And I think that that's something that we already bring within our cultural, Erntdankfest or Erntfescht. But I think that that's one of the most meaningful things to me about the Thanksgiving in November is the fact that just before all the mayhem unleashes on Black Friday, people can actually appreciate that one day of gratitude. So anyway, we have 2 days of Thanksgiving here in the Daicherai, but I really want to see us build up our Erntfescht identity. Outside on my front porch, I still have my decorations and my lights and everything from Scheiding, which was the last holiday before I got really sick with COVID, and I actually hate to say this, but to a degree, part of me sort of has a bad memory of all that and plugging the lights in because I was getting sick toward the end of Scheiding, And so this is also an overcoming time for me. You know, I want to throw another light. I wanted to throw a strand of yellow lights on, but my first paycheck of the school year hasn't come yet, so I'm kind of holding off on that for now. But if I can possibly get lights in time, I want to put some yellow lights on there and begin to make Erntfescht a day worth decorating for and celebrating outwardly as well as inwardly. And I'm going to be working on that, I hope. Within the next week. Our paychecks come on the 15th, and then if I can get some yellow lights out there, I'll throw them over top of those Entstehung lights and hopefully get past some of my own baggage from having dealt with the COVID in February and March. So let's see. I'm able to see this any questions that appear on the chat right now, but if you can possibly type them in on the Urglaawe Live Elf questions thread in the Urglaawe group, I would appreciate it. But if you have any questions about Erntfescht, Erntdankfest, or any of the other names this observance goes by, please feel free to type them in now, and then otherwise we'll go on to other topics. Okay, so much for Jeopardy. All right, the next major observance, which is it's a lesser observance, but it's major to many of us in Urglaawe, is Zisasege. And Zisasege falls on the 28th of September. And oh yeah, I should have mentioned also Teutoburger Forest. Actually, I'll get to Zisasege in a minute. Teutoburger Forest. This is a minor observance that probably should become a bigger one, and that's the battle that took place in the year 9, in which the Romans actually lost a battle, and it's pretty cool. Let's see, I'm gonna cheat on Wikipedia here, but it's the Schlacht in Teutoburger Wald. Part of my Dutch accent almost came out there, and this was the. This is where Arminius, or hold on, I gotta get my Arminius statue. Good old Arminius. It's I'm not very good with my historical memory, so I'm cheating here, but, so following the attacks of Drusus to 1109 BCE, Arminius, along with his brother Flavius, was sent to Rome as a tribute by their father, Segamarus the Conqueror, chieftain of the noblest house of the tribe of the Cherusci. Arminius, or Hermann as we call him, then spent his youth in Rome as a hostage, where he received a military education and had been given the rank of equestrian. So essentially the Romans trained somebody who was going to end up fighting them later on. So I want to get to the year 9 parts. I am cheating with Wikipedia here, again, because my brain's like a steel sieve, and I might forget a lot of stuff that I don't want to forget. But between 6 and 9 CE, the Romans were forced to move 8 of 11 legions present in Germania east of the Rhine River to crush a rebellion in the Balkans, leaving Varus with only 3 legions to face the Germans. This represented the perfect opportunity for Arminius to defeat Varus. While Varus was on his way from his summer camp west of the Weser River to the winter gardens near the Rhine, he heard reports of a local rebellion, reports of which had been fabricated by Arminius, disinformation. Edward Shepard Creasy writes that this was represented to Varus as an occasion which required his prompt attendance at the spot, but he was kept in studied ignorance of its being part of a concerted national rising, and he looked on Arminius as his submissive vassal. Varus decided to quell this uprising immediately, expediting his response by taking a detour through territory that was unfamiliar to the Romans. Arminius, who accompanied him, directed him along a route that would facilitate an ambush. Another Cheruscan nobleman, Segestes, brother of Segamarus, an unwilling father-in-law to Arminius, warned Varus the night before the Roman forces departed, allegedly suggesting that Varus should apprehend Arminius along with other Germanic leaders whom he identified as participants in the planned uprising. His warning, however, was dismissed as stemming from the personal feud between Segestes and Arminius. So how about that? So for once, a a conflict with in-laws worked out for the better. Arminius then left under the pretext of drumming up Germanic forces to support the Roman campaign. Once free from these prying eyes, he immediately led his troops in a series of attacks on the surrounding garrisons. So the battles, Varus's forces included his 3 legions, which were 17, 18, and 19, 6 cohorts of auxiliary troops. They were non-citizens or allied troops, and 3 squadrons of cavalry. Most of these lacked combat experience, both with regard to the Germanic fighters and under the prevalent local conditions. The Roman forces were not marching in combat formation and were interspersed with large numbers of camp followers. As they entered the forest northeast of Osnabrück, they found the track narrow and muddy. According to Dio Cassius, a violent storm had also arisen. He writes also that Varus neglected to send out reconnaissance troops to the main body of the troops. So let's see. So what's the long and the short here? The long and the short of it is that the Germans actually defeated the Romans. Roman casualties have been estimated at 15 to 20,000 dead. And this began to kind of bring about the whole concept of like a Germanic nationality. And so many people honor Arminius, or Hermann as we call him, as the founder of the German nation. And it is that reason that I got the altar when I was over there. And and I was at the actual Denkmal, or the actual memorial stone to him, and also when we kind of followed the route of the battle and and at the site that it is believed where it took place. So apparently that happened in September of the year 9. I've heard actually September 9th of the year 9, but I can't really find anything that really applies to that. But I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name, unfortunately, but it looks like Hallweard. If you have anything to add to this, please, by all means. Maybe I'll even put you on camera if you want, because I'd like to see what information you might be able to give to fill us in on this important time. You guys have Roman reenactors, so we have Roman reenactors. They don't compare, I'm sure not. Let's see if I can see something here. So it's in Missouri. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Because battle reenactments and stuff are not things that most Mennonite boys grow up with. But it was interesting to see it over in Germany. I'm glad that these kinds of things are being retained here in the diaspora from the German lands. So I'm kind of excited about that. If you have, if there are pictures that you have from your reenactments, Hallweard, please put some in this thread within the Urglaawe group. I think that'd be kind of cool to actually see. All right, see. So, are there any questions about anything related here to either the Teutoburger forest, which is, if you're not sure what it is, I'm going to type that into the questions thread so you get a chance to look it up. This is definitely something that is in German and thereby Dutch history also. The Battle of Teutoburger Forest. And boom. That's one of our discussion topics. Let me see if I can figure out how to get you on here. I actually don't know. We've never done that before. Let me see if I can get you on here. 1 second. Because when you first come in, it actually asks me, it says add to camera or something. Let's see. Oh, yeah, somehow I can see how to add some others, but not you. Maybe it's because we're not Facebook friends. Let me see. There we go. Hold on. See if I can do it. Might work. Boom. Connecting. There we are.
Hey.
All right, so talk about it a bit.
So, we both do Viking Age reenactment, and that's where we started, but I'm a super huge nerd for the earlier Germanic history, the Migration era, pre-Roman Iron Age, Roman Iron Age, all that jazz. And I've loved the Battle of Teutoburger Forest for forever, as one should. And so some of our Viking reenactor guys got involved with some Roman reenactors, and we started a first century group called Hrabnazing. And basically, we're just kind of starting out, testing the waters. But Teutoburg Forest is really interesting because the preparations the Germans made for that battle took days or weeks in advance to prepare. They picked the spot they wanted the Romans to go through. They made fortifications, and they were ready when they went there. It wasn't just disorganized tribesmen conducting an ambush. It was very, very well thought out and planned.
The disinformation campaign alone. I mean, just I'm echoing on your side, so excuse me. The disinformation campaign alone was just amazing. That they were able to pull this stuff off. I think that little unlost spat was pretty good too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to see if I can mute myself so you can keep talking without feedback. I don't know if I can.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can't seem to figure out how to do
that. I'm by no means an expert. I learned a lot from a documentary about the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, how archaeologists figured out where the battlefield was and started excavating it and all that jazz. And I can't remember the name of it, of course, but it's super duper interesting. And I'm trying to think.
I actually have, since I was there in 2017, I have a whole bunch of photographs on my phone there that when I'm done, I'll post to the group.
That's awesome. I want to go over to Germany desperately so that I can go to the museum and see the artifacts from that battle.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That is where I got the Herman. I got the Herman Stegmoff. I got the Herman statue right from where the statue itself is, which is not at the same place as the battle was.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can possibly get to this. Let me see if I can look at some of this picture. I'm afraid to actually go look at it, so I'll wait until after we're done with the chat. So, this takes place where in Missouri?
So, our Viking Age group is Skjaldborg, and we have members in Missouri. I don't know about Arkansas, but Illinois, Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado. And Skjaldborg is centered around a site in northeastern Missouri called Ravensborg. And that's where we do our first century reenactment stuff and our Viking Age stuff. And then there's a Roman group of reenactors that's in Arkansas. And they're the guys that we are kind of starting first century with. For Viking Age reenactment, we are all used to fighting with steel blunts, and the Romans aren't so much. So we're trying to, get them to have some of the bloodlust that the Germanics do, so that we can fight with them. But the reenactment we do is, it's beyond just combat. We're interested in crafts and all sorts of other stuff.
Okay, it's really cool.
Thanks. I'll find some links and some pictures and put them in the group after this.
All right, thank you. Great.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm hearing that, but that's because of the interference is coming from me speaking through his side of it. When I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Mine?
Yeah.
So I am mostly English, and so it's an Anglo-Saxon name. Hallweard.
Okay. Hallweard? Okay.
Yep.
But when you disconnect, let's see whether or not I still have the audio problem. But thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, appreciate it. Nice little addition to our old Love Alive. Thanks. Now, after we disconnect without hanging up, right? All right. Oh, there we go. All right, does this help at all? Do I sound better, worse, same? Can't tell. All right. So I'm assuming that everybody can still hear me. So the next thing would be Zisasege. And now if Paul wants to take it over, I'd have to figure out how to mute myself. Because Paul, you and I should actually be able to talk about this together. Since I'm on my phone, there has to be a way for me to be able to mute myself without disconnecting completely here. Let's see. Let's see. How could I possibly figure out how to do this? Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I can't figure out how to do it. Paul, I want to see if I can bring you up here somehow. But anyway, if Paul and I can figure that out, that'd be cool because years and years ago, the presence of Tisa came up within Urglaawe context, and one of the most important ones was it's mostly unnamed dot connection, to be honest, where we had references to charms that were definitely about Tsiu, whom many of you know as Tyr. The problem is on my phone, I can't figure out how to mute myself without disconnecting from the from this Urglaawe Live chat, so I can't even mute myself when it's happening. I probably could just do it at the regular thing, but it's, yeah, I didn't see a button either. There's a way to do it though, because whatever, just let's see. We'll perfect this technology sooner or later. Let's see here. Because Paul, you should be able to request it to do it. Let's see. Try something else here. Hold on. Let me see something here. If I click on that, nope. Yeah. No, I don't do that. What's that? Yeah, we may have to forego this for another time. But I really would like for Paul to be able to chat about this a little bit too. I think, Paul, I guess you first learned about Cisa at Trothmoot 2012, right? And I had been studying for a few years before, especially when I came across the Braucherei charm that made a reference to the South Star. And I found this to be kind of interesting because it was saying the South Star is the light of the eye to the North Star. And the North Star is a known kenning for Tsiu in Hexerei and Braucherei lore, and as well as the lore of some of the other ones. And I was wondering at the time, how do we get this South Star reference for people who were, pretty much limited to the Northern Hemisphere and the middle of the Northern Hemisphere at that? Well, as I began to think at the time that this was definitely a reference to a consort of Tyr or Tsiu, and other things began to indicate that I found a few other very oblique references to the South Star in our folklore. But then I came across an article about Cisa in a journal called Tyr, and as I was researching that, I began to put more and more together and recognize that that this very likely was a reference to a goddess known to the people of Augsburg, and its prior name was Tsisarim, which relates also to Tisa, and so this was a Swabian goddess, and one of the largest groups that made up the Deutsch migration were the Swabians, along with other Alemanni and the principal folks from the Rhineland-Palatinate area who are Franconians, and that's and many of the dialects that came together that formed a Deutsch were of Swabian origin, or Swabi origin ultimately, but in the form of Alemannic. And as we were studying that, then one time I mentioned this to Ben Wagoner of the Troth, who those of you who know Ben know that he is a font of information, and he is the SHOP, or the publishing director of the Troth. And he said, well, actually, there is actually a South Star. The South Star is the star Vega, and that northern navigators used to use that as the South Star, until it actually became aware of a star by the southern polar region. So, and the other thing about Vega is that Vega was also once the North Star and will be the North Star again. So there's like a little flip-flop going on there between Polaris and Vega. And this actually fascinates me, and I've still not done researching all of this, but it made the sense in the fact that the South Star was the opposite, the axis upon which their world spun, even if it was only related to the northern hemisphere. The fact that they had a southern reference was amazing. Now, Paul, if you can figure out, if you can follow what he's saying there, by all means, do it. Let's see if we can get you on here. Okay, because several folks found a lot of meaning in Caesar early on. They found a lot of connections to Caesar. I was actually one of them, and studying the Lord Caesar, we were very fortunate in the fact that the Catholics inadvertently left many of her attributes attached to Mary, the undoer of knots. And I don't know if you can possibly get in here from the chat room itself, Paul. Let's see I wonder if you can request to join in somehow. I don't know, but anyway, I'm going to continue while you figure that out. Right? So the and so we see Caesar as the undoer of knots for just causes, but she will also do knots for just causes. She'll sometimes put obstacles in your way as well as out of your way, and that is very meaningful to people. And also, if you look at the city of Augsburg's shield, which I will actually post to the Facebook group, you can see that it has a pine cone, and pine cones are also associated with Caesar, because they see her as being the protectress of the city, the same way that a pine cone protects its seeds. And the church that got built on top of her temple on her mountain in Siesenberg in the city has pine cones at the top of it, so they still managed to hold these connections to the ancient lore on top of it, and I find that to be also fascinating. Zisasege, in the main Urglaawe group, I have an article posted there about how can you, as a solitary Urglaawe or new Urglaawe practice. Here we go. Paul's going to be coming in. Come on. Okay, now I got to figure out. Let's see. Approve. I have to figure. Wait, it says there's already a guest in this broadcast. That's not. Approve. It doesn't seem to be working, Paul. I don't know if Paul's got or not. So bring on cam. Yeah. Oh, there he is. Here. All right, now I'm going to try to see if I can mute myself somehow. Let Paul talk for a minute or two.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi. Nope, that's you.
That's me. It's a flipper
I'm
camera.
this way. I'm seeing.
Actually, no, our audio's not too bad, right?
Is it?
I know it's okay. I hear you.
Can everybody else hear okay? Okay. Sounds like we're good.
All right, so go ahead. Why don't you talk a little bit about it?
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, you're 100% correct. It was 2012 that I met you at Trothmoot, and you told me about Zisa, and ever since then I've been with her. You know, like she's the main deity I work with. There's just so much to reflect on with her. At the time, I was actually going through a really painful divorce. And, you know, the metaphor of tying the knot and untying the knot was actually really, really helpful for me in that, in the sense that she's a goddess who helps one release, who helps one to kind of gently undo the pains, and the sorrows and the tragedies that befall you, and she helps you work through them in that respect. um, which actually, so I've been working on the Ziza section for the Artroth Volume 2 on the third edition, and in doing the research behind how Ziza gets carried forward, I'm jumping ahead here a bit, but in the 1615, a
Okay.
a miracle is
That's,
attested to Mary Undoer of the Knots. But I don't know if you know this, Rob. Do you know what that miracle was?
what was it?
It was a guy and a priest praying before this Mary figure, and he brought his wedding ribbon with him, and it's a wedding ribbon that you tie up, and it was frayed and tattered over the years. And he was praying because his marriage was falling apart. It was kind of unraveling and untying, and he prayed for Ziza to help him endure through the wedding, or endure the marriage and have the marriage, you know, be good again. And the ribbon that he brought undid itself and became brand new and clean, as if unspoiled by the ages of the years. And that was the miracle. That was the original miracle.
Which sounds a lot like when Pete found the untied knots in his basement. You know, I mean, that was what showed him that he was going to get the house that he got, because he prayed to Ziza, or honored Ziza directly. And then we went upstairs with the guy. The house inspector came back downstairs, and the thing was untied on the floor, and it was very, very bizarre.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we have our own little sets of miracles.
I was saying, so you typed in there that Zisasege is September 28th. I also did some research on that. In the old lore, you probably know this, but for everyone's benefit, the old folklore is that the Roman military arrived at Zizarim on the Calends of Sextilis. And knowing some of the people who have already talked, people probably actually know what day that is. But for those who aren't familiar with how the Roman calendar translates to the modern calendar, the year started in March. That was when armies would start marching. And so they numbered the months after that. Sextilis was the 6th month after March, which is the 1st of August. From the 1st of March to the 1st of August. And they didn't find people at Zizarim at the time. They actually encircled it and put a siege under the city. And it was on the 59th day that the other tribes in the area came for Ziza's feast day, and basically surrounded the Roman soldiers that were laying siege to the city, and kicked their butts and made them retreat. So that day, when you add 59 to August 1st, it brings you to September 28th. And so like we have old folklore about that date. And then it also does correspond to the Mary Undoer of Knots, the Catholic feast day, which is also September 28th.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of funny. Like I'm gonna read from the post within Urglaawe related to that, because it is sort of funny that you would have thought that maybe the Romans might have pieced together beforehand that they were coming at a potentially dangerous time, when one of the largest groups of one of the larger tribes of Germans comes to Zizarim to honor their city's goddess. You think that somebody might have actually figured that out before it actually happened.
Well,
I think they thought it was going to be done before then, and I think they thought they would seize the city that fast, and well, they didn't. I mean, eventually they obviously did seize it, and that's how it went from being Cisarim to Augsburg. But
they did Cisa it.
Yeah, don't give up your day job yet. But yeah. So on the post within Urglaawe that I made on this, how can you observe the feast day of Zisasege as a solitary or new practitioner of Urglaawe? All right. So even going back a little farther here, her name appears to be the same, to share the same root as that of Tsiu, which is a connection between the Sky Father and Cisa. Some words that relate to Tsiu in German instead refer to Cisa in the Suevi dialect. The word for Tuesday, for instance, is Ziestag, and that ended up getting replaced by the Diocese of Augsburg with Aftermontag, because they were trying to erase the memory of the goddess. The modern city of Augsburg was Cisa City, Cisarim, or Cisarim, depending how you spell it, at the time when the Roman army was defeated in the year 1 BCE. Let's see. There are references in Deichsel that can be easily connected to her. A charm refers to the South Star, as I said earlier, being that the light of the North Star's eye. The association between the North Star and Tsiu is well known, but for many years I was puzzled by how northern people could know the Southern Star, and that's where Ben Wagner came in and really helped out. Vega was once the North Star, and due to the vagaries of our access precession, it will be again in about 13,000 years. Norse lore's Lokasenna does make a reference to an unnamed wife of Tyr, whom Loki says bore him a child. And there's also some evidence of conflation between Cisa and the goddess Isis.
Thanks, Grim.
Yeah, but the problem that I have with that is that that section of Grimm is all in Latin. That entire Isis section is in Latin, and or is it the Cisa section? But either way, and it makes it obviously like this. So they took the German, they translated all to English, but they left the Latin intact. And I guess that back 100 years ago or so, everybody spoke Latin who was in the education field. But you know what? I'm in the education field and I don't speak Latin. And then let's see. But the other one is this Essenarius guy. Centuries after conversion, Duke Essenarius or Esnarius, depending on the spelling, who was the Duke of Swabia, he put a temple or a shrine to Cisa in at his castle at Hillmont by modern day Kempton. And it's sort of funny showing that even after all those years, centuries, like literally, like I think he was 1500s or something, the memory of Cisa lived on among her people there. The color red is associated with her, just as it is with Tsiu. And matter of fact, I don't know much. Again, I was never raised Catholic, but how many Marys are there who wear red?
Right, exactly. Like blue is the Marian color. Any Marian scholar will tell you blue is the color of Mary, to the point where blue was associated with women and girls because it was about modesty and chastity and temperance and all of these womanly virtues, and like it was a cool and calming. So we have this Mary Undoer of Knots who is like cloaked totally in red, like, yeah.
But then they have that cloth behind her that's in blue. I guess that's to settle it a little bit. I don't know. Newer lore, the Deichruin Fackel, which is the cognate of Kenaz, is associated with Cisa, and that's related to elemental metal, harness fire, and the illumination of hidden information. And the pine cones again play a role here. In dry conditions with wind and fire, the pine cone releases its seeds, allowing for regeneration. And so in many cases, that's also the release of the pine cone represents the undoing of knots and allowing for people to become regenerated in the process. That's regeneration, whether literally by creating new things, or by internally regenerating your soul or your spirit and regaining your energy. So a postmodern question that Jennifer had once asked is, who tends to see you after he loses his hand, and what does it mean for this is a meditation thing, as she had asked, and I thought about that a lot. Is what is Cisa? How do Cisa and Tsiu work in conjunction as a pair? he is the right action and the justice. She is also to remove all obstacles to get to the right action or to get the action completed. And so we often combine Zisasege with Erntfescht due to practicality and time constraints. But we always have two separate altars. We always have one for Erntfescht and one for Zisasege. And I still observe Zisasege as an individual holiday on the 28th, even if we had held Erntfescht and Zisasege together as a group earlier, which is the case this year. And remember also that some knots are better off left tied.
Mm-hmm.
There are some times where the knots will not come undone because you're better off that way, or you're asking for the improper reasons, or your actions are more stilted or tilted in a different direction. Within the Urglaawe group somewhere, we have a suggested menus for Zisasege that Kate Cullifer had assembled back in 2015, and I'm pretty sure that Victoria will be doing this up in the next podcast when it's ready. And those of you who haven't listened to Hallweard Haven podcast, Victoria started them, I believe, back at I think it was either Scheiding or Ostersege. She does a great job with it, and I encourage you to do it. It's hallweardshaven.com. And Victoria has the perfect voice for podcasting. I think she does a fantastic job. And so let's see. Are there any other questions here? Because we're starting to reel it all in. Probably may as well just stay on.
Well, I do want to throw out there.
What's that?
I want to throw out there so that to the point you were saying about the pine cone. It's the Austrian stone pine. In case people are curious about this, it's or the Swiss stone pine, Pinus cembra, CEMBRA, and actually, if I do this right, there are some pictures of the pine cones that you actually would get.
Oh, look at those, huh?
And
then when they open up, and I'm even more curious. When they open, do you have any? Just see if we can find shots of them with them open up because they kind of have a reddish tinge.
Well, that's what I'm getting to that, but just so it's also on the seals of Augsburg. So right. This one at the top is one of the earliest seals, and this is one that's a later seal. They both have this image. Apparently, the earlier one was supposed to be a tree of life, and then they said later on they quote unquote found a ancient pine tree within the city, and then they renamed, and then they put the pine cone on the seal. I don't know. That's a little weirdly apocryphal to me, but yeah, that's so what you were saying about the how that pine cone looks a little red. If I don't know if you could see this or not, they actually make a pine liqueur in that region. And I just got this the other week. I was super excited to have the opportunity to find this. It's called Zierbens, and it is made from basically creating a liqueur out of the pine cones from the Swiss stone pine. So
how about that?
So cool.
Look at this.
Yeah, and it has, I don't know how well you can see under the light, but it has this lovely sort of reddish amber color. And I haven't opened it yet. I'm saving it for Zisa's feast day. But
now, not being a non-drinker, obviously, this is not something that would even cross my horizon. Were you not, to bring this to me? I think that this is absolutely fascinating. How did you get it?
So for people who don't know, I live in Brooklyn. There's a shop in Manhattan that had it, so I don't know how specialty it is, but I did have to search a bit.
Well,
actually,
how about that?
I can't claim credit. The guy I'm dating found it while I was giving a talk about Zisa. He snuck behind my back and ordered it while I was unaware, and a couple days later, he presented it to me as a gift. So I gotta give credit where credit's due.
Oh, how about that? This is my kind of discovery, though. Made from the.
While we're on the topic of new things that also have come up, so I've been reflecting a lot on Zisa and her role as kind of a Norn or as a weaver goddess, And, because unweaving.
Remember, the Dutch word for Norn is vortexa. We try to keep our
vortexa
vocabulary rolling. Okay.
Vortexa, and which makes sense. Again,
or vortex in this case for singular Norn. But yes,
as a weaver of weird, but wart anyway. So weaver goddess, unbinding, unspooling, these are all sort of weaving attributes. One of the things that made Augsburg a very prominent city during the Renaissance era and late Middle Ages was weaving. It was a cloth town. I'm not great. I just learned about this myself, so I'm not sure of all the words, to be fair, but it seems like a textile. There we go. That's the word. It was like big in the textile industry. And it's just interesting that Zisa has that sort of connection there. And then this was at the East Coast thing. I did a workshop, and other people who are more involved in the fiber arts started chiming in saying, I bet those pine cones would make a really nice dye. And they did some research, and it finds out that, like, in addition to making a nice red liqueur, it also makes a nice red dye.
Well, how about that?
Yeah.
See, and I keep telling people, Zisa and most of our other gods and goddesses that are lesser known, they reveal themselves over time. And Zisa came out of the gate really strongly there in 2010, 2011, 2012. And since then, some of our other goddesses have also been vying to get known. And I think that in the last year or two, it's been Bertha who's been kicking everybody's ass. I still have the goose print, right about there. But it's very interesting to see, and we're still learning all these new things. I'm now thinking I now feel like I have to go up to that shop in Manhattan, and
I'll see if I can get you the contact information about that shop.
Yeah, I'll look up to see whether we can get it here anywhere. I myself probably won't drink it, but I would definitely put it up as an offering to Zisa for this particular time of year. I got the notes. I'm already passing them around to people who are not on this chat who will want to know this.
Awesome.
This is very, very exciting.
Oh, and another fun thing I want to point out, just as a quirky lore thing, but so 1615 was the year that Catholic attribution occurs for a Mary Undoer of Knots. 1615 is also the same year that the Prolakturm was built in Augsburg, and the Prolakturm was a kind of an ancient watchtower, an ancient protective tower of the city, and in 1615 it got rebuilt to be part of the municipal offices. And as part of the rebuilding of it, they put on top of it, and this is where, and this part, they put on top of it this weather vane with Zisa, and she has these, here's a picture of it, she has these battlements on her head, and what I thought it was like a crown thing, but again, at ECT, someone who studies heraldic imagery says that that's not a crown. Those are actually the top of a wall. Those are the battlements of a wall, which signifies protection and I think sovereignty. So it has that kind of crown aspect to it, but like I never knew that. And there she is, of course, holding the pine cone right there.
Oh my God, that's so awesome.
So but the really crazy thing about all of this is, so these were kind of like the Enlightenment thinkers, the people who were kind of connecting to the ancient myths and their ancient past. And the year that this was raised was 1615, the exact year that this other supposed, well, I don't want to be hard on the Catholics, the year that the other miracle existed, but it just, the very year that the center of the city, like the municipal center of the city at the top of their watchtower, that they were putting up an icon to Zisa, you have the Catholic Church saying, oh, Mary Undoer of the Knots is a goddess, I mean, a saint who's here. Like, and it's just, it's like, it's such a cool realization when you start kind of comparing the timelines of all these things.
Yeah, yeah, and this is why we all need to make sure that we're all in touch with one another regularly with over these things, is because these little discoveries can easily slip by one of us and go,
Yeah.
because like this Searbenz thing I never would have even heard of, and so I think it's kind of fascinating. Huh.
I want to point out another thing that has come up in the research, or if we have time, I don't know. You tell me. It's an hour now.
Yeah, there's no real actual, end time.
Okay, so I will say. So earlier, someone was asking about where this information about Azisarim comes from, and so we have Grimm's Deutsche Mythologie, 1830s was published, and he's referencing kind of earlier. He's referencing a Latin text, which, as I understand, and again, I'm still doing the research on this, so this is all very new to me as well. But it was Grimm claims it was a bunch of 10th and 11th century manuscripts. The only thing that at least we're aware of that survives is part of the Nuremberg Chronicle, and that was around 1400, where they talk about Zisa. And in that article chronicle, they compare her to Circe's. So Zisa it's funny because it feels like they keep trying to stick other goddesses onto Zisa, and it doesn't stick because she's not like them. She's not like Isis. She's not like Circe's. But so we date this back. We can at least date this back to the 1400s, 1100s that people are writing about this. We don't have anything earlier written about this, which makes it so it was probably oral tradition. We don't really have any records from the Roman end of things of this happening. But so it's like an oral folk tradition about the founding of the town. And if you start to really nerd out about linguistics, so there's kind of the Grimm's law, the first Germanic consonant shift that happens in like 1000 BCE, where we go from like a Diwas to a Tiwas. It wasn't until like 200 or 300 CE that you get the second Germanic consonant shift, where Tiwas splits and we have Tir and Tu and Tio. But that means that when the Romans, when this was supposedly happening in 15 CE, that Zisarim fell, or that, so I'm jumping around. In 15 CE, we do have records that Zisarim fell, and the city of, I forget the name of it. They named it something else. Not Augsburg, but like whatever that city's name was. They founded it in 15 CE. So the story about the repelling of the Roman invaders had to happen before 15 CE. But during 15 CE, in that time, Sisa wouldn't have existed as a word yet. It would have been like Tiwa or something like that, rather than Sisa. But the fact that
they also spelled the C at one point too.
Yeah, that's what you see in the 14th, 15th century manuscripts. Yeah, the Sisa. But it's an interesting thing, because at the time she probably, if this was actually from the Roman period, like written down, it would have been written down as like Tiwa and Tiwas and that, or Tiwas and Tiwa. But the fact is, it's oral lore, and so as the language changed, so did the words that they used to change, and so it's just really, really cool. And that's where, and maybe Zisarim is closer because it has like a longer name. I don't know. I'm not a language expert. I'm just learning all this stuff myself. But it's.
Well, I actually just came across this in a 2013 article. I haven't read it. I just read the headline where they're talking about this this very subject. I'm going to post this into the Facebook group. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it brings up the whole Tag after Montag thing. And we'll just post this right into this chat line here. Which thread is it? It's the Let's push in the questions thread. This is amazing. Okay.
I've been wanting to talk to you for a while about this, actually.
It is funny, you know. So in the question starting, I put this in here. This is the Zisasege / after Montag thing. It is in German, so I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But, and I'm gonna also paste in your thing about the liqueur in there too.
The Zierbens, yeah.
Yes, this is kind of exciting. All right. So we have several, we got a lot of topics coming out of here. I mean, so does anybody else have any questions about anything, or? Paul combed his hair straight up while we've been talking. So
my hair is growing out. I don't know. I need to get a haircut.
Mine's all growing this direction, but
You look very well groomed.
Yeah, for once.
Let's see. Someone mentioned earlier that there's an old name for Loki as a knot. And I just want to get back to that we do have, there's folklore in Iceland, the Shetlands, and Denmark all have references to a knot as a Loki. And which I think is really, really fascinating in the sense that they both are kind of about unraveling things. I mean, in very different ways, but it's Loki unravels the status quo and causes problems. We don't really have stories about we don't have myths about Zisa's unraveling in the same way that we do with, kind of Norse mythology. But still, there's this kind of underlying unraveling idea that I think is really...
And now this is just total conjecture and UPG because Loki is not known in Urglaawe lore.
Right.
But the connection of the fact that you have, the connection to Loki playing a role in Siu losing his hand, and and the unraveling there versus Siu's wife or consort tending to his hand or whatever. That's one that you could kind of run with for some philosophical debates or discussions. Because again, one of the things about one of the things I gotta be talk about this a little bit to folks is myths and lore are not static, just like this cat who's sniffing my hair behind me. Say hi, Slinky, if you're gonna be there. The myths and knowledge are not static. Suddenly I feel like I'm in the Three Stooges because you made a question mark over my shoulder. But there are living, ongoing traditions, and what gets accepted and what does not get accepted is can vary widely. For the sake of continuity and some sort of containment, we keep what is identified as Urglaawe canon, if you will, or group experience defined by the community leadership per se. But everybody's still entitled to their own UPG and to worship as they wish on their own at home. So this brings us back to the whole orthopraxy thing. When we're all together, we do things one way, but when we're all separate, we are all free to do and to express our religion as we wish. And that's not always easy to do necessarily, especially when you're one of the founders of the founder, I guess, technically, of the tradition, and trying to because it's not a dictatorship either. It's a community. It's a community evolution, and some of the things that you've discovered here have added to our Zisa lore just within the past 15 minutes, and that's the way that it should be. This is the modern expression of an ancient Germanic tradition through the lens of the Pennsylvania Dutch culture. You just added a bit to the Pennsylvania Dutch culture by doing this, and I think that's what's kind of fascinating about being alive in this particular time, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm kind of excited about this. I mean, after the last huge lore input that I had was or discoveries were with the Lutzelfrau in December, who was probably a alternate form of Bertha, who was kicking my ass all from 4 year all the way until the end of last year, and this is much more pleasant.
Well, can I add on another piece of UPG that is going to be a little bit more out there, but it fits for me.
Okay.
So going back to the idea of Zisa and Loki as kind of having both unraveling aspects, part of me is thinking, well, what do they actually? I'm good. Actually, I'm going in reverse. Zisa strikes me as a goddess who is queer. Queer in the sense of not queer in the sense that she blurs boundaries. The academic queer theory definition of like to queer something is to interrogate the boundaries of, to evaluate the boundaries. And I see Zisa being a queer deity in the sense that we do have this aspect of her where she is Catholic, but she's also not. And she's not the only deity that does that, but she kind of queers divinity by being both Catholic and heathen. She also kind of queers divinity in the sense of we know about her, but we don't really know much about her. So she's like known and not known in many respects. And then the other aspect that strikes me as queerness is the coming out experience. That is a huge kind of undoing of like the knots of social expectation. And there's a huge release of energy and just of one's mind and sense of being when one comes out, and that kind of unraveling. And so there's a lot of queerness that I see inherent within her. And then if you're still following me, this goes back to the idea of Loki, because Loki, we do know, is a genderqueer deity who changes gender to suit their desire. And then that also kind of connects back in where it's like, I have these ideas about Zisa as a queer deity, questioning these boundaries, coming out. And then we have Loki, who has a genderqueer aspect. It kind of lends more credence in my mind to the idea of the two of them having relations.
Yeah, and thinking about what you're just saying here, I think many of us also seem to see different aspects of Zisa. Because I've heard a lot of people who encounter her and they feel like she's really strict, and I'm like, I don't really get the whole strict thing. Like I get the, if you come to her with a stupid cause, or something, she's probably not going to undo the knots for you. But I don't see her nearly as I better watch what I say because Bertha's statue is looking at me. But nearly as what's the word I want? Stern as nearly as iron, like full of iron as Bertha is. Because it's going to go off on a slight tangent here also, but we often hear from people about how scary Odin is and how he is a taskmaster or whatever but I gotta tell you, our goddesses, they're pretty damn strong. And Bertha will mercilessly kick your ass from 9 ways till Sunday, or 9 ways till after Montag, until if you're not doing what you set out to do, and if like Hala's been a little more gentle than that, but so I guess we experience the gods and goddesses in different ways, much like we just you and I might have had the same. You and I might have both had, say, at the same time. Say that we were in school together. You and I might have both had the same 5th grade math teacher. I may have hated her. You may have loved her. I may have thought that she was freaking nasty, and you might have been like, "Well, no, she's really cool." So a lot of it does come, as I think, as Rebecca says here, but they can get irritated if we're wasting their time. You know, I mean, like if they're
Or if you're wasting your time, they seem to have little patience for that as well.
yeah, it's perhaps. I mean, it's we didn't really talk about the condition of the deities very much, and that might actually be a future Urglaawe Live discussion. Is, you know, what do our deities, what is their life like? Like what, and too much of it is conjecture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of it might be drawn from some people from the understandings from the Greek or the Roman myths. You know, and some of it might go back to the doing as apples and everything, but it's not. I don't think it's necessarily quite that simple. And you know, it, we worship or we honor these gods and goddesses that we still are learning about at a visceral level. Like, we don't even necessarily know them all that well. We begin to know them, but you know, and if you begin to look at it from a strictly dualist point of view, which of course doesn't usually mesh well with heathenry, you can see why a lot of people from certain, you know, religious traditions found our deities to be absolutely appalling.
Mm-hmm.
But since we're not dualists and we're, you know, trying to remove ourselves from the culture of the god of jealousy, it's there's a lot of growth and a lot of understanding has to come within us, which brings us back to that topic from a long time ago of the mind shift that has to take place when you are going from, you know, a Christian, particularly Christian, but also Muslim and also
Mm-hmm.
Jewish to a degree. But I think Judaism has a better handle on it than the rather inorganic face of Christianity and Islam. And you have to go through this shift where you actually, pretty much everything that you've ever known your entire life has to be reviewed and looked at from a different perspective. And that could also be another future Urglaawe Live discussion. Because it's not the same mind shift for everybody, but the dualism thing and the absolute right and the absolute wrong, and, you know, either of God, of not of God, it requires a real mental reorganization.
Yeah.
And otherwise we end up with a lot of what I call, you know, monotheistic dry drunks, where they've put on the trappings of the polytheistic faith, but they're still living a monotheistic mindset. And I guess we just found our topics for the next ones. Let's see, it was dualism versus mind shift, and what was the one I said before that?
Evolution of our deities.
Conditions of our deities.
Conditions of our deities.
Because I mean, Grimm actually writes about this in one of the earliest chapters. Hold on. I think it's volume 1. This cat really wants to be right here. Come on, Slinky. Writes about the conditions of the gods somewhere fairly early on in Teutonic mythology. And I think it's worth a review, but it's also, we have to also remember that for as much information as Grimm presented to us, and I quite honestly think he had a little heathen bent to himself, but I don't know that he necessarily identified as such, and so he may have been about as objective as we can get, but, you know, he pieced a lot of things in himself. Sometimes we just have to accept that we have what we have, you know, and we know, and allow the evolution to continue, and allow the gods and the goddesses to build relationships to us, and us with them, and us with each other, and to allow things to evolve. And so, yeah, maybe we never will know. I'm sorry, I already forgot how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. Hallweard says, yeah, the past is past. I mean, we can learn from it as much as we can, but now it's the present. Like, you know, we are now living a vibrant religion, you know, that on calendar it's only 13 years old, but we're drawing off of traditions that have been going on since the migration and before, that managed to survive underground in German lands. If you read the Shaman of Oberstdorf, you see that this stuff was alive in the 1500s still, and that they were still using names of old deities and things in different contexts old ways die hard, and they go underground long before. They'll turn up in children's rhymes and superstitions and things like that. And it's just it really is it's kind of a miracle in a way, but it's also the fact that while our ancestors may in many ways have given up on the gods and goddesses did not give up on us. So that being said, I think that's a good closing point. If anybody else has any questions, please post them again. If you post it into the chat room, the chat group, I think we'll see it'll turn up here, I believe. And feel free to ask stuff on the topics after this is over too, because that's one of the reasons we actually have these Urglaawe Live casts, is to try to spur conversation and initiative and to encourage people to get out there. Now, keep in mind this the weekend of the 19th, that is the Erntfescht, that is the autumn equinox and the harvest home. I really encourage folks, even if they're not sure how to observe it, we have the programs from prior years in the Facebook group, but to actually take it in now. You've begun a journey, and it's now time to actually live the journey and join us on it. And if you screw up or whatever, it's no big deal. But now it's time to actually begin to make it a thing in your life on a daily basis. And so that being said, hail to all of you for joining me. Hail to Hallweard and to Paul for coming on camera. I actually kind of like this. I think we should do stuff like that more in the future. Hail to the audio for getting better after over time. And again, if anybody has any questions, you can post them on here. But I really appreciate the time that everybody gave. Yeah. So hail to all, and this will be posted live. It'll also go onto our YouTube channel, which is, I gotta tell you, I'm the world's worst video editor. I'm the worst. For me, everything is like a roller coaster ride, which is what my life is like. So it works out very well that way. So hail to everybody, and thank you very much.
Hail everybody.